The car that saved Porsche was not the 911. It was a front-engine coupe that many purists hated at first, and yet without it the brand might not exist in the form we admire today. This is the full story of the Porsche 928, the grand tourer that almost replaced the 911 and quietly rescued the company during one of its most dangerous decades. In the early 1970s, Porsche was in a fragile position. The legendary 911 was already more than a decade old. Emissions regulations were tightening, fuel crises were shaking the world, and the rear-engine layout was being questioned internally for its long-term viability. Even within Porsche, there were serious discussions about whether the 911 concept had reached its limit. Executives believed the future demanded refinement, stability, luxury, and a layout better suited for high-speed cruising across continents. That vision became the 928. Introduced in 1977 for the 1978 model year, the 928 was radically different from anything Porsche had built before. Instead of a rear-mounted flat-six, it used a front-mounted V8 engine. Instead of raw mechanical character, it focused on balance, comfort, and grand touring capability. The body was sleek and futuristic for its time, with integrated bumpers, pop-up headlights, and a wide, planted stance. It did not look like a traditional Porsche, and that was intentional. Porsche engineered the 928 to be the car of the future. Under the hood sat an all-aluminum 4.5-liter V8, producing around 219 horsepower in early European specification. That may not sound extraordinary today, but in the late 1970s it delivered smooth, effortless power paired with high-speed stability. More importantly, Porsche introduced a rear transaxle layout, placing the transmission at the back to achieve near-perfect weight distribution. This gave the 928 remarkable balance, making it stable at Autobahn speeds while remaining comfortable for long journeys. It was not just fast, it was refined. The interior reflected that ambition. The dashboard was driver-focused, yet luxurious, with high-quality materials and a unique instrument cluster that moved with the steering wheel to maintain visibility. Porsche wanted this to be a true grand tourer capable of crossing Europe at high speed without fatigue. In 1978, the 928 won European Car of the Year, a rare achievement for a sports car. On paper, it looked like a success, but reality was more complicated. Traditional Porsche enthusiasts were deeply attached to the 911. They loved its raw feel, rear-engine character, and unmistakable silhouette. The 928, with its V8 and front-engine layout, felt like a departure from heritage. Many believed Porsche was abandoning its identity. Sales were respectable but not explosive. Meanwhile, the global economy remained unstable. The oil crisis had changed buyer behavior, and sports car demand fluctuated. Porsche faced significant financial pressure in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Development costs were high. The company needed stability. This is where the 928's true importance begins. Throughout the 1980s, Porsche refined the 928 continuously. The 928S increased power. The 928 S4, introduced in 1987, brought major aerodynamic improvements. A larger 5-liter V8, and up to 316 horsepower in some markets. It could reach nearly 170 miles per hour, placing it firmly in supercar territory at the time. Later versions like the 928 GT and the final 928 GTS pushed output even further, with the GTS producing around 345 horsepower from a 5.4-liter V8. Performance was no longer questioned. It was a genuine high-speed machine capable of competing with Ferrari and Mercedes Grand Tourers while offering everyday usability. But more important than performance was revenue. The 928, alongside the 944 and 968, provided Porsche with broader appeal and steady sales beyond the 911. These front-engine models attracted customers who wanted Porsche engineering but preferred stability and luxury over traditional rear-engine dynamics. By the early 1990s, Porsche entered one of the most critical financial crises in its history. Sales dropped dramatically, production inefficiencies hurt profitability, and the company nearly collapsed. During this era, every model in the lineup mattered. While the 911 remained the brand icon, cars like the 928 helped sustain Porsche's global presence in key markets such as the United States. Even though the 928 never fully replaced the 911 as originally envisioned, it achieved something arguably more important. It diversified Porsche's engineering expertise. It proved the company could build more than one type of sports car. It expanded technological knowledge in Vate development, transaxle balance, and high-speed stability. That engineering philosophy would later influence future models. When the 928 ended production in 1995 after nearly 61,000 units built, some viewed it as a failed experiment because it did not replace the 911. But history sees it differently. It was not a failure. It was a strategic evolution. It kept Porsche relevant during turbulent times, it demonstrated courage to innovate beyond tradition, and it helped bridge the company into the modern era that would later include the Boxster, Cayenne, and Panamera. Ironically, many elements that were controversial in the 928 later became strengths in Porsche's lineup. The idea of a front-engine Porsche seemed shocking in the 1970s. Today, front-engine and even SUV Porsches dominate global sales. The Cayenne alone transformed Porsche's financial future. Without the experimental mindset that produced the 928, that transformation might never have happened. From a design perspective, the 928 has aged remarkably well. Its wide rear arches, smooth nose, and muscular proportions now represent a bold 1980s statement. Values in the collector market have been steadily rising, particularly for clean GTS examples. What was once considered the alternative Porsche is now appreciated as a unique chapter in the brand's story. Driving a 928 today reveals something fascinating. It feels different from a 911, but not inferior. The Vate delivers smooth torque. The chassis feels planted. It is less nervous, more composed, built for distance rather than aggression. It reflects a different philosophy of performance, one based on confidence rather than intensity. And that difference is precisely why it matters. Porsche's survival has never depended on standing still. It has depended on calculated risk. The 928 was one of the boldest risks the company ever took. It challenged identity. It divided enthusiasts, but it strengthened engineering depth and expanded market reach. In business terms, that matters more than purity. In hindsight, the 911 survived and evolved into one of the most successful sports cars in history. The 928 quietly completed its mission and exited. It did not need to replace the icon to justify its existence. It only needed to support the company during uncertainty. And it did exactly that. Today, when collectors search for underappreciated classics with real historical significance, the 928 stands out. Not because it was the loudest Porsche, not because it won the most races, but because it represents a moment when Porsche dared to question itself. That willingness to question tradition is what ultimately preserved the tradition. So the next time you see a Porsche 928, remember that you are not just looking at a grand tourer from the 1980s. You are looking at the car that nearly changed Porsche forever and helped ensure that the 911 could continue its legacy. Sometimes the most important cars are not the ones that dominate headlines. They are the ones that carry a company through its most uncertain years and quietly shape its future. The 928 was one of those cars, and without it, Porsche's story might have ended very differently.